Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today, we are going to be looking at something pretty crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So get this. Researchers over in Denmark have built a model that can, predict stuff about your life.
Really?
Yeah. Things like how long you're going to live.
Wow.
I know, right? Or even, and this is the really weird part, your personality.
No way.
Yeah, and they do all this just from looking at events in your life, like what jobs you've had or where you've lived, all that kind of stuff.
So they're, reading the story of your life to make these predictions?
That's a great way to put it.
Well, what's really impressive is they've trained this model, they call it Life 2Vec, on this huge data set.
Oh.
Yeah, it's from these Danish public records. So we're talking millions of people over, almost a decade. And they've got super detailed info on all these people.
Like what kind of info?
Well, stuff about their health, how much money they make, what work they do, even their location.
And all this is day by day.
Day by day, it's wild.
So it really is like having this giant time-lapse video of people's lives, right?
Wow.
And then they use that to figure out what makes people pick.
Exactly.
So how does this whole life as language thing work?
Well, you can think of it this way. Each event in your life, like getting a new job or having some health scare, those become like words. And your whole life, it becomes this long sentence made up of all these words.
Okay, I think I see where you're going with this.
Yeah.
So the model learns the grammar of these, life sentences?
Yeah.
And that's how it figures out how certain events, tend to follow other events.
Exactly.
So it's kind of like, how your phone will, predict the next word you're going to type?
Oh, yeah.
Except instead of suggesting the next word in a text, it's suggesting what might happen next in your life.
Right.
Whoa, okay, that is both fascinating and a little bit creepy, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. But the researchers have actually visualized how the model organizes all this information. They call it a concept space.
Concept space.
Okay.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So imagine it like a map, right? And similar concepts are grouped together on this map. So all the words related to pregnancy and childbirth, those are all clustered in one area. While, different job types, those get grouped based on their relationships in the data.
Okay, so wait, you're saying the model figures out that, being a doctor is closer to being a nurse than it is to being a construction worker.
Yeah.
And it does this just by looking at how those events play out in people's lives.
Exactly. It's amazing. The model isn't just recognizing patterns, it's actually learning the connections between different life events.
Okay, this is starting to get a little mind-blowing, but I gotta ask, can this model actually predict when someone is going to die?
Well, it's not a crystal ball or anything.
Right.
But it does show a pretty surprising ability to predict early mortality.
Early mortality.
Yeah, so specifically death within 4 years.
And surprising. In a good way, I hope.
Oh, yeah, definitely. The model was actually better than other statistical models at predicting mortality, especially for people between 35 and 65.
Oh, wow. That's the age range where it's usually super hard to predict mortality, right?
Yeah.
I can see why the researchers are so excited about this. But how'd they figure out what the model was using to make those predictions? Was it looking at things like lifestyle or health conditions?
Well, they use the special technique. It's called TCAV.
Okay.
And this helps them figure out what factors were most important to the model's predictions.
So spill the tea. What were some of the key things it was picking up on?
Well, it turns out the model was really sensitive to things like income level, what kind of job you have, and even gender.
That makes you wonder, how much our jobs and stuff really do affect how long we live.
It really does.
But this is just correlation, right? Not causation. We can't say for sure that having a certain job makes you die sooner.
Right. It's complicated, lots of factors at play. And this research is really just the beginning.
Wait, there's more. You can't just leave us hanging like that.
Get ready to be even more amazed because this model can potentially do even more than just predict mortality.
Oh, and don't tell me. Personality.
You got it. In the next part, we'll dive into how this model can actually figure out parts of your personality just from the events of your life.
You're kidding me. All right, folks, you do not want to miss this. Make sure you tune in for part 2, where we'll explore how this model can decipher the nuances of your personality. All right, so we're back, and I'm still kind of reeling from that last part. Predicting when someone's going to die, that's heavy stuff. But now we're talking about predicting personality. That's even wilder. I mean, personality seems so, so individual, so unique to each person. how can a computer model possibly grasp something like that just by looking at data?
It is pretty mind-blowing, right? This idea that our personalities are somehow reflected in, like, the actual events of our lives.
Yeah. It's like, how does that even work?
Well, you could think of it like each choice we make, every experience we have, it kind of leaves a mark on who we are.
Okay, so like, are you saying our life experiences actually shape our personalities?
Exactly. It's kind of like, a sculptor working with clay. Each time they push or pull the clay, it shapes the final form.
Okay, I get it. That's a great analogy. Mm-hmm. But how did they actually do this in the study? Did they like give people personality tests and then try to match those up with their life events?
You got it. They used data from this massive study in Denmark. It's called the Danish Personality and Social Behavior Panel.
Okay.
They call it POSAP for short. And this study collected personality data from a ton of people, which let the researchers compare the model's predictions to, real personality assessments.
Ah, so they had a way to check if the model was actually getting things right.
That's smart. But personality is so broad, right? There are tons of different traits. What exactly were they looking at here?
So for this study, they zeroed in on 10 personality traits that are all related to extroversion.
Extroversion, like how outgoing someone is.
Yeah. Things like how sociable they are, how assertive they are, their energy levels, all that. Gotcha.
Yeah.
And why those specific traits?
Well, those traits tend to be more, outward, right? Like you can kind of see them in how people behave.
Right. So it makes sense to start with those to see if the model could pick up on those external signs.
Exactly.
And get this, it actually worked. The model was able to predict these extroversion-related traits with a pretty decent level of accuracy.
Pretty cool, huh?
It is. But I gotta ask, did they find any, specific connections between certain events and personality traits? Like, let's say someone moves around a lot.
Yeah.
Does the model see that as, a sign of being adventurous?
That's a really interesting question. And while this particular study didn't, dive deep into every connection the model made, it did find that certain events were, extra informative. No. So yeah, people who frequently move or change jobs, those might be the folks who score higher on, measures of social boldness.
That makes sense. It's like the model is finding those subtle clues in people's lives.
Right.
Anything else that surprised the researchers?
Yeah, they found that people who take on leadership roles or who are really active in, social activities, they tended to be more extroverted too.
Wow. So it really is like the model is piecing together a puzzle, using those outward actions to get a glimpse of who someone is on the inside.
It is pretty amazing, isn't it?
It is. Right. It's also, honestly, a little bit unnerving. I mean, are there any dangers here? Could this kind of technology be used to, stereotype people or judge them unfairly based on their past? What if someone made a bad decision when they were younger? Does that mean they're stuck with that label forever?
That's a totally valid concern, and it's something the researchers are definitely aware of.
Okay, good. Because I have to admit, this whole thing makes me think of those, sci-fi movies where computers start making decisions about people's lives.
Right. But it's important to remember that this research is super early stage. We're talking baby steps here. Life 2Vec in its current form. It's not meant for real world stuff, like making big decisions about people or evaluating them for jobs or anything like that.
Okay, so this is more about exploration and figuring out what's possible. It's not about building some kind of personality police machine.
Exactly. This is about pushing the boundaries of what we know, exploring new ways to understand ourselves and, how our lives unfold.
That makes sense. And it's also a good reminder that even with these amazing new technologies, we always need to be careful about how we use them.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, I think we've covered a lot of ground in part 2.
We have.
So why don't we take a quick break, and then in the final part, we'll dive into the bigger picture of what this all means.
Sounds good to me. We'll be right back to explore the broader implications of this research and what it might mean for the future of understanding, all of us. Okay, so we're back, and honestly, this whole deep dive has really gotten me thinking. This Life 2Vec model predicting mortality, personality, it's just wild. Mm-hmm. But it also kind of makes you question everything, like who we are and what shapes our lives.
I know what you mean. It's like looking into a mirror, but the mirror is showing you something you didn't even know was there.
Exactly. And that's what makes this research so fascinating, but also kind of scary. If a model can figure out all this stuff just from looking at our lives, does that mean our lives are already set? Yeah. Are we really in control of our own destinies, or is it all just, predetermined?
That's the big question, isn't it? Free will versus destiny. It's something humans have been debating forever. This research doesn't give us all the answers, but it does give us a new way to think about these questions. It suggests that our lives aren't just random events, but rather these stories that unfold in patterns that we can start to understand.
So maybe it's not about one or the other, but like a mix of both. Like, yeah, we made choices, but those choices were also influenced by all sorts of stuff, like where we grew up, what kind of job we have, all those things.
Exactly. It's a complex web of influences. And as we develop tools like Life2Vec that can help us untangle this web, we need to be really careful, really thoughtful about how we use this knowledge.
Right. Just because we can predict something doesn't mean we should use that prediction to, control people's lives or put them in boxes.
Absolutely. This research is about understanding, about opening up new possibilities, not about limiting people's freedom or potential.
Well said. This whole deep dive has really been a trip, and I'm sure our listeners are feeling the same way.
I hope so. It's these kinds of conversations, these explorations, that push us to think differently about ourselves and the world around us.
And isn't that what it's all about? So on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive into Life2Vec. We hope you found it as mind-blowing and thought-provoking as we did.
And if you're hungry for more, we encourage you to dive deeper into the world of computational social science. It's a rapidly growing field that's full of fascinating insights into human behavior.
So keep questioning, keep exploring, and most importantly, keep those deep dives going. Thanks for listening, everyone.